Good morning. We're here again for our Conversations for the Animals. I'm Tena Lundquist, Faust, co-president of Houston Pet Set, here with my twin sister
and co-president Tama Lundquist.
And we're here with interesting guests today. We try to diversify our guests a little bit, and we're with Drooly Dog Foods. And so we have Xee and Rudy with us.
Hello.
Good morning.
Thank you for having us.
Hi, good morning. So glad you guys can be here. We're all coming off of a great weekend and excited to talk. So Drooly Dog Food is Houston-based, is that right?
Yeah, we are based right out here out of Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. We started last year in the midst of the pandemic, and we are still going strong as a startup and happy to be based out of Houston.
Good. Well, we know that there are a lot of dogs in Houston, so obviously there's a lot of need for high-quality dog foods. How did you guys start? Let's start from the very beginning. How did Drooly come about?
Well, Drooly came about because of two events that happened in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. And so the first one was back in 2007, I had a very loving Great Dane. Mm-hmm. And I was feeding her a top brand dog food. And at the time, I thought I was giving her the best I could possibly give. But throughout her short lifespan, she started developing skin rashes, simple infections wouldn't go away with antibiotics. And eventually she died of kidney troubles.
So sorry.
And so that was my first exposure to how the pet food trade is operating, mm-hmm. and how it can be improved. And yes. Then the second time was about a decade later. I was at a friend's house, and we're in the backyard. We're having a barbecue, and I look over, and in the neighbor yard, I see this pole in the middle of the lawn, and it's a blazing summer day in Austin. So it's probably maybe 100-degree day. And I see this little furry lump attached to this big heavy chain, tethered to this pole. And it just bothered me. Mm-hmm. And so I kept thinking about it all day. And, that night I went home and I went to bed thinking about this image. And so the next day I was like, I'm just going to go and check up on this little dog. And I go back the next day, and I see the same tether, that dog in the same spots. It looked like it hadn't even moved. And so I made the brash decision to jump the fence, mm-hmm. and save that dog, mm-hmm. and that was just my goal, it's tunnel vision. And so,
which we don't recommend for most people,
because
dogs are property and it's stealing. But okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yes, it gets better. The story gets better.
It gets better. I'm sorry.
We think it's great.
It was in my younger years. I wouldn't do that now, but it was my younger years.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Come on, Rudy.
And so I hopped this fence, and I'm taking off this chain, and there's a padlock on it, but I'm able to slip it off this dog, and right when I put this dog in my arms, I see this bigger dog in the yard. And, at that moment, I was like, I got to run. So I run, get to the fence. And in that moment, I thought I was going to be a goner. Mm-hmm. I felt this dog breathing down my neck. And then I hear the owner yell at dog to freeze. And the owner comes out running towards me. He of course, was irate over the whole situation. And, but in that moment, I said, I'm not laying this dog on my hands. Right. It's going to be mine. I'm going to save it. And so, I haggled the guy, pleaded with the guy, and eventually I took out my wallet and had to give him everything I had, mm-hmm. For this little thing. But, I ended up taking this dog home with me, and, I took the dog to the vet. The dog ended up being 4 weeks old.
Wow. 4 weeks old.
And it had a padlock around its neck.
It should not have even been removed from its mother at 4 weeks. Okay,
mm-hmm.
go ahead.
It was malnourished. And I mean, this dog was so mistreated that its hind legs were just, its fur was just wrapped up with whatever fur was on its torso. So it couldn't even walk.
Oh my God.
And so, I bathed this dog, I groomed it, and it took about 4 days for this dog to start walking again.
Oh my gosh.
And so, let's fast forward about maybe a year, this dog started developing certain health issues. Mm-hmm. and eventually ended up having to put the dog down because
Sorry.
it just wasn't able to recover.
Right.
And so that was my second time realizing how important pet nutrition was, especially at an early
Yeah.
age. And so I told myself I got to do something good. And I decided to start a company that kind of worked off the beaten path compared to
Right.
the traditional dog food.
Very interesting,
Yeah.
where a lot of people see what you saw and go into rescue, because so many of our rescue partners in this community it's just born out of, they're born out of a passion for animals. You know, you could have done the same thing. I'm going to try to get as many dogs off of chains. I'm going to rescue. Your vision was different. You said, I'm going to create nutrition for dogs, which is essentially what food should be. It should be nutrition.
It all starts with nutrition.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Very interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. So I had this idea, and fate had it that I met Xee, not too far in the distant future, and he gave legs to my idea, and that idea has been running ever since.
Wow.
I think
Fabulous.
he gives me too much credit.
So what is your position with the company then?
So he's the founder, and so I came in behind. So now we're co-founders. But Rudy had this great idea, and I've always had a love for animals. Growing up, my parents had a little farm with chickens and ducks, but we didn't have any dogs. We had a couple cats, right? And so at that point in my life, I had just gone through a drastic lifestyle change where I said, I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to eat really clean. And when I met Rudy, he talked about this company that used all human grade ingredients in their food, the same things that you would find in your kitchen, and just really got me thinking. And he's like, but I do it not for humans, but for dogs. And I'm thinking, wow, with the problem that Houston has with all these homeless dogs, and my brother having his own dog and then reading what's on the labels, I'm like, I can't even read half these words. And here this guy's showing me this amazing dog food and this concept he has. And I'm like, we both are such big advocates of leaving things better than we found it. I'm like, why not? This just fits right with my moral fiber. So he hooked
Grew
me
out of
along.
a passion.
It grew out of passion, yes.
And it's so interesting when that happens, how doors open for you. It's almost like a calling. I hate to get too deep too quickly, but it's almost like a calling then when you had that opportunity, or you had that situation where the passion grew, and then the doors start opening, and it's almost like you can't not walk down it.
Things fall into place in such a
Yes.
way that it just gives you such momentum.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're doing not the right thing, but you're following the path that you're meant to follow,
Absolutely.
which is a beautiful thing. That's how we got involved in animal welfare and in Houston. And once you see the suffering, then you can't look back. There's only forward. And how do we make this better? I love your story about your animals and this being born out of a concern for an individual pet, because that's how we got involved in caring for our pets nutritionally. And I had a Westie named Taz. And by the time he was 6, he had been on every antibiotic. He had been on steroids. He had been on anti-inflammatories. He had been on gastrointestinal things because the other drugs were making him sick to his stomach, all because he had skin issues. He was overbred. He was from a backyard breeder, which I didn't understand at the time. My husband bought me this beautiful dog, and he was the inspiration for the work that we do. And so I'm not discrediting how he came into my life. It was meant to be, but he was overbred. And so he had skin issues. By the time he was 6, he was on so many meds. He was on vet approved dog food that was costing $3 from the vet's office, which was garbage. And he also developed a cataract, went blind in one eye. And we've been on holistic paths our whole lives. Our mother was kind of, she followed a holistic path as for nutrition when we were children. And so it just dawned on me, there's got to be a better way for my dog. So that's how I learned about holistic foods, medicine and just kind of a lifestyle for our dogs. And luckily, he lived to be 17 years old. So
That
had
age
it
is
not
amazing.
had it not been for the food and the holistic care, it never would have happened. So to your point, it truly is a better way, I think, to care for our animals. And I think you had a similar experience.
Yeah, I actually had the uncle to your Taz. So I had a Westie, and my mom and sister helped the man who would be my husband pick out this dog for me, and he was the love of my life. And a Westie, of course, same breeder, of course, because Taz was the nephew, and he had again skin issues, and so the steroids and the injections and all of that. And then I went to live in London, and you think he lived with you. Oh, back up. No, I was pregnant, I remember, and tried to eat really healthy as I possibly could. And I was thinking about it, and in those days, that was in 1999, and how can I better feed my little doggy? And I loved him so much. I was worried I would never love my child as much as I love this dog. That's how much I loved him. And of course, my love for my child far exceeds that, but you just love them so much. You do anything for them. So I started cooking for him when I was pregnant, because I thought, whatever I'm making for myself that's as healthy as I possibly can make it, I could just give it to him, right? I mean, there's no reason not to.
Absolutely.
And so he got better then, but then I went back to the regular food, and then there were issues, and he went to live with my sister when I was in London for a little while, and she really got him on that really healthy path. But it makes such a difference. The nutrition makes a difference in how they act, how their bodies behave, their attitudes, the light in their eyes, how they love, how they run, everything. It affected and you think about it, the fuel, you put good gasoline in your car, you've got to put good gasoline in your bodies and the bodies of those you love. So, your turn.
Yeah.
We've been doing all the talking, but that's why we're so interested in pet nutrition. And if I may add to that, when I went on your website, I loved that you make it so easy, because when I was cooking for my dog, I'm sure I was missing some nutrients, right? Because you can't cook the same for every person, nor can you cook the same for every dog. But you guys make it so easy with your questionnaire. How much do they weigh? What's their breed? Well, what's their activity level? All of those things. And then you have the formula like that, and this is what you should be feeding. And you make it so easy, which not only are you thinking about nutrition, you're thinking about how can I make it easy to get it to the dogs, obviously.
Yeah, and that was all by design. I think our goal was to really spread a great food. We don't call it good food, we call it great food. In our website, we actually call it positive experiences, because we've had nothing but really great feedback from our dog food. From one of our early adopters, he had a dog that just wasn't regular, but always had runny stools. And it was to the point where he was going to have elective surgery on the dog's anal gland to help it. And when he started feeding Drooly, that's the first time his dog became regular after 9 years.
Wow.
And that saved him from having to do that elective surgery, and that dog just living a really great, healthy life now.
Yeah.
Rudy's in the early stages when he did all of his trials, one of his customers before I came on, and I let him share it because that's the story that tugged at my heart. I'm like, wow, like I couldn't believe the positive side effects that were coming in. To your point, when we designed the website, it was ease of use. Like you can go to these websites that are so complex and you get overwhelmed. You're like, forget it. But these are our fur babies, like I have one that's 5 months old and he's on Drooly, and I'm subscribed myself, so, but Rudy's story of our first true owner, subscriber's name touches my heart every time he tells it.
So we have a subscriber named Violet, and she had a 10-year-old poodle mix, and I think it was also from a puppy farm kind of situation. She didn't know. And when the dog was about 6, it started developing arthritis, and it was crippling to the point where the dog would have to be lifted on and off the couch. It couldn't walk to the door. And when she came on as a customer, the dog was about 10 years old at that time. And she started feeding Drooly, and within 2 weeks, the dog one night, the doorbell rang, and the dog hopped off the couch by herself and ran to the door, and was her spunky self.
Yeah.
And apart from that, the owners go around the block a couple of times after dinner every evening, and they used to have to always carry her. And now, 6 months later, she was able to walk around the block several times with their owners and not skip a beat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's giving them their lives back. I remember my Taz, he was in trouble all the time. His name was Jackson for the first 6 months, but he was such a Tasmanian devil. We just started calling him Taz, and it stuck. He was in trouble. He got thrown out of doggy daycare. He almost got thrown out of her house. I mean, he was just like, and I thought it was just his personality. It was the food. And so once
he was like an ADD child.
He was like an ADD child.
But
He was
like extreme. And I love ADD children. I think they're the most creative, wonderful kids in the world, and they're just given a bad rap. Like Taz was.
It wasn't his true personality.
Right.
The food was having a reaction, and he couldn't in his brain, and he couldn't calm down. So once we switched the food, everybody thought he had gone to school to like some kind of training program. Wow. He became like docile. I could take him through the airport, set him down to get through security. He would just sit there. People would come and say, "Who trained your dog?" And I said, I didn't train him. I just talked to him. So it made such a difference for him neurologically and kind of psychologically. So it's not just their physical, it's their kind of their quality of life becomes so much better. And so the food was probably 80% of his recovery, I'm sure.
Yeah, I solely believe that. I mean, Violet's dog also had this tumor or cyst on her side. And as Violet's dog, Harriet, ate this food, it just shrank. Wow. And with that shrinking of that cyst, that the vet couldn't explain. And to your point, the vet wanted to put her dog on this vet-approved name brand, and it wasn't doing anything for her. So she's like, "Rudy, I'm out of options. Like, this is my last-ditch effort to save Harriet." And today, Harriet's cyst is gone, and she has great mobility.
It's not a miracle food or anything. I think all it is that you're just giving the dog nutrients it needs, and it allows its own body to fight off whatever ailments it has.
Well, and when you're feeding something toxic, it's going to have ramifications. There's something there's an outcome when you're feeding something toxic, and I think it's also somewhat arrogant on the part of our dog food companies to think that they're able to provide one little kibble that has all of the nutrition for an animal, and it's cooked down. It is the holistic food makes such a difference.
Right.
How did you formulate? How did you who did you go to formulate this?
Sure. So I partnered up with a data scientist, and we had a nutrient profile which we wanted to follow, which follows the AFCO standard, and we pretty much created an AI, and this AI would mix and match ingredients back and forth until we met something that resembled the nutrient profile we're looking for. And so the development of the software took about a year to do, and we ran the software for about another year. And within that year, it produced maybe 1.6 billion recipes, most of which were garbage. But as the AI learned what worked and what didn't work, it slowly fine-tuned our recipe to the point where we have this one product. And originally, before the AI, I was doing this on Excel spreadsheets by hand, and it was impossible.
Oh my God.
Like my calendar.
Yeah, and it was an obsession. I would do this day in and day out. I put everything off just to do this, and so partnering up with the data scientist, I mean, it sped up, this
Years
idea.
of research.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'd still be working on it.
I would still be working on Excel. Yeah.
Wow.
with the kitchen counter cleared and the KitchenAid mixer here. I mean,
it was
crazy.
That's how it
back
started.
then.
So can you tell us, we don't want your proprietary secrets, but what are the ingredients that are nutritionally best for
Sure.
dogs? And is it just dogs or is it cats?
So at the moment, we just do dogs.
Okay.
They're much easier to feed
Mhm.
right now. So when it comes to dog food, there are essential amino acids and non-essential amino acids, and some are recognized, some aren't recognized at the moment. And so we try to use protein sources that are human grade and provide the whole gamut of those amino acids. So, for example, we have ground turkey, which is high in taurine, which has just recently been shown to prevent collapsed trachea syndrome and coronary heart issues.
Wow.
And we use chicken liver, which is high in zinc, which is what many large breed dogs need. And then we also use beef liver, which is high in copper.
Great.
And so those are some of the we use no fillers, no artificial preservatives or anything like that in food.
And what about grains?
So for some reason, the AI produced a grain-free formula. As
Makes
far as
sense to us. Yeah.
yeah, it was the end product. And so instead we use chickpea and we use buckwheat flour. Buckwheat's not a grain,
Right.
it's actually
Grass.
it's a grass, yeah. It's derived from a fruit actually.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like the world can learn better nutrition through their dog food. You know, I mean, I'm thinking about this and how many people would be better off probably eating your dog food than than going to the the grocery store, and you walk through those frozen aisles and you're like, no nutrition, no nutrition, no nutrition. You know, and to hear that it's human grade, that's great.
And we joked about that during the pandemic. We're like, with the groceries out of food, we have all this dog food. Pop it in the microwave, add some salt and pepper, and we're good to go. I mean, if you really think about it, a majority of it's ground turkey and chickpea flour, buckwheat flour. So when we cook this stuff, we do it in such a unique method where it's not in the hundreds, but it's just hot enough to kill any pathogen, right?
Yeah.
So when you cook it, it smells like bakery.
Yeah.
It smells like a muffin.
It's very pleasant.
It's a very pleasant smell, and it's not runny. Sometimes when you have these
Canned
homemade dog foods, cat foods, it's runny or it's actually just nice and solid, compact. So we joked about that a lot, that it's human grade. It's the same foods that I use to cook at home that restaurants use. And the only difference is that this AI helped us formulate the one recipe. When people ask, why don't you guys have like a lamb or a beef flavor? We're like, when you think about the nutritional profile, a lot of dogs are allergic to chicken.
Yeah.
So when we chose turkey, it was by design because it has a huge source of taurine, which dogs need.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's great.
I think something else to consider that's really overlooked and a lot of pet parents don't ever read about is the amount of soluble and insoluble fiber found in the food. And so I think it's very important to focus on the gut biome,
Sure.
Which aids in digestion and absorption of nutrients.
Right.
And so it's important choosing a food that has both insoluble and soluble fiber.
Interesting. So how does the fiber play into the nutrition then in terms of the gut biome?
Well, so insoluble fiber provides a medium which the gut flora can grow on. It's a substrate ideal for it. And soluble fiber is a fuel for this bacteria to grow in. And so, when you brought up children with ADD, sometimes their diet is affected.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
It's the same thing with dogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the gut is related to the head.
It's the second brain.
Yeah, it's
exactly.
TAS. I mean, you talked about TAS. We're like, that's exactly this flora makes a big difference.
Right.
So that's something else we really focus on too.
So how was it launching this product during COVID? I mean, you're on this path and you're, kind of being led, I feel like. So it was it's perfect, right? The journey is perfect. But how did you find it practically?
So it wasn't practical. It was so painful because, for the longest time, it was essential workers only that could go out, and we couldn't deem ourselves essentials, even though our dogs are essential.
Yeah.
For
We
this
need to change that, don't we?
Yeah,
Exactly.
for this last year, they stayed home. We stayed home with them. On our website, we're starting our blog, and we're talking about separation anxiety. We're about to return back to the regular world, and the dogs and our cats that are used to us, what are they going to do as we leave for 9 hours a day? They don't get to go on that stroll. They don't get to go outside and exercise. They don't get that treat, So during the pandemic, it was painful, but thanks to our early adopters and a lot of emergency services, we did a lot of campaigning about our emergency services. Come to us. We do contactless delivery. We'll drop it at the door, and we had some success in that during the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a challenging year for everybody. And our dogs and cats loved it because, at the very least, they just get to sit at your feet while you work all day, and they love it so much. But yeah, it is. We're seeing a lot of people, or hearing from a lot of people right now, like, oh, my dog is not handling this back to work thing well.
So you guys developed this food. Do you do any supplementation or anything, or does all of the nutrition come from the food that you provide?
So there's one supplement we do add. Huskies tend to require higher than above average zinc in their diet. So we do supplement a tad bit of zinc.
Interesting. Okay, great.
Yeah. And this is a natural source. It's not zinc oxide. This is a zinc gluconate, which is a highly digestible form of zinc.
Okay.
Did you learn all of this through,
I
or
did.
did you know any of this before you stole that dog?
I'm so glad to hear there was an exchange of money because it then became legal.
Right,
Yes.
right. Yeah.
That's what I tell them. I'm like, when you tell the story, make sure you remind them you took
I was
everything
very
out of your
hesitant
wallet.
to tell the story.
When you bought the dog. My apologies.
When I bought it. No, I have that personality where if I see something that needs changing, I just obsess over it, and I want to prove that I can change something. And so when all this came about, these experiences happened in my life, it was an obsession. That's all I can say.
Do you have 9 to 5 jobs?
I used to. I actually used to be a software developer.
Oh.
But this has taken a full-time role, and I mean, I feel like I have to really dedicate myself to it.
So how do people get your dog food? And I'm sure everybody's wondering, is it expensive? How expensive is it?
So the price varies on the size of the dog, of course. I think it averages about maybe a cup or 2 coffees a day. It's a very simple process. We have a website, drooly.com. You simply go on there. You enter a few questions concerning your dog's breed and size and age. And from there, we formulate the recipe for you and the quantity, and we ship out to you once a month. The product, because it is fresh, it is delivered frozen. And you simply thaw before feeding, and it's as simple as that.
Wonderful. Great. So when it's delivered, does it is it contactless?
Contactless delivery, absolutely.
So it's in something that will preserve it. It'll stay frozen for an hour or 2 in the summer sun, or do you have to be home?
No, so the way when we deliver it, it's an insulated box.
Okay.
And we try to deliver it during the either morning or afternoon, so it doesn't sit in the hot heat all day.
Great. Evening when the individual gets home. Yeah.
So we try our best to do that. But this food, I mean, when we actually, funny, I drove around Houston with this thing in the back of my truck, testing how long can it go before it starts thawing out.
Wow, guys thought of
A lot
everything.
of
But during COVID, we had nothing but time.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was just trying to, I guess I'm looking for that silver lining, like how did COVID help you, in developing the product? But maybe we're coming to that.
Yeah, it really helped us fine tune the packaging and the labels. It gave us time to think of, when we think about what do we want our brand awareness to be? We want it to be a humble brand. We're not going out there to earn money. I mean, we're a for-profit company, but we're going out there to change lives of dogs and their owners, because now that I have my 5-month-old puppy, I realize how you fall in love with these. Like I think about my brother and sister-in-law, their kids are graduating from high school, going on their own. Now they have 2 dogs and those are their babies. And so I kept thinking we have to do something right, and so our brand awareness is all about humble. Our color scheme is just something relatable and relaxing. So that's just what we're aiming for. And I think COVID really helped us fine tune that about ourselves, but more or less it's given us the opportunity to meet the community that needs this help. We're looking to get more involved with the nonprofits around Houston. I was here during Harvey, and I remember when there was a huge section of dogs that were displaced. And I walked in, I'm thinking, we have to walk all these dogs? I'm like, where are their owners? How can they forget about these animals?
Were you at NRG Arena? That was something we helped set up.
Yeah, when I was reading about that, I'm like, I was there. I didn't meet you guys, but I went there to walk the
Oh,
dogs
bless
and
you.
feed them. I'm like,
Oh,
I wonder if you walked my dog.
yeah.
Fluffy. I got a dog from there. I wound up with a Hurricane Harvey dog, and his name is now Finnegan. But yeah, he was there for 30 days. So,
Wow.
yeah, and we have lots of friends that adopted from there. And
mhm.
yeah, so wow, our paths have crossed.
Mhm.
Yeah, no accident. Well, we love this because good nutrition, caring for your animal in this way helps elevate the status of animals in our society. And that's what Houston Pet Set wants to do across the board. We continue to elevate the status of animals because once we do that, all of our problems are solved. Once people realize the value of an animal, whether it's a purebred or whether it's a dog that's lived on the street for 6 or 7 years, they all have value. And this product does that. This says, your dog is worth feeding.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
great.
They're family members.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They are.
They
Beyond
truly are.
family members, yeah. And with 90% of families who have dogs, considering them a member of the family, not a
Mhm.
pet, but a member of the family, we think that you have a lot of people out there excited about your product. And you had a question, Tina, that you brought up about one ingredient, or for all the animals on the streets. There are
That's,
hundreds
you
of
knew where I was
thousands.
heading with
Okay,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hundreds of thousands of animals on our streets. We have street feeders. It's expensive when you go out and you watch these street feeders, and they're working. Their budgets are their same as their wallets, basically, right? So, but if there was one thing that we could do for the street animals, what would it be, or what would it be nutritionally?
So I'm going to go under the assumption that because these dogs are living on the streets, many of them are not neuter spayed.
Right.
And so I would say that there are dogs out there with litters. And so I think you'll be feeding many of these dogs. So you want to feed a high caloric ingredient.
Mhm.
And I would say it would be any sort of animal protein. I think would just be
Mhm.
ideal.
Just the more
Mhm.
protein, the better.
I absolutely, because, at that age, those puppies are being fed by their mother. They're going to need a lot of iron, a lot of essential nutrients such as that.
Yeah.
They'll also need a lot of calcium. So I think some sort of calcium supplement can be put into there.
A huge shout out to our street feeders, as you
Yeah.
said, Tama, that do this every day.
Selfless.
Completely selfless. Yeah. That go out and make sure that these animals, dogs, mostly cats, have some sort of nutrition every day, every other day.
Mhm.
And until we can rescue them, until we can get them off of the streets, we're saying just hold on. We'll get to you when we can. It's unfortunate we can't go and get them all right now.
And it's a big
but
problem here in Houston.
It's a huge problem.
It's-
Yeah. So thank you all so much. It was a great.
Yeah.
See how
Thank
fast that time went?
Went by very quickly.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I know. I still have like 80,000
I do
questions.
too. But I want to talk about organ meat, and I want to talk about
Yeah.
wolves in the wild.
and how you want to partner with the philanthropic
Yes,
animal
absolutely.
community. Maybe we should throw that in because, how do you want to partner? How do you see yourself playing into this crisis we have with all the animals on the streets in Houston? And if it's, I don't know yet, that's fine too.
we are looking to get involved. And I think this is the first step for us in coming in and listening to all the podcasts that you guys have put out and then reading up on. And I'm like, Rudy, this is right up our alley. I mean, we're young and we need to be part of this community. What a better way to do than to give back, even if it's our manual labor hours or the food that we produce, whatever it is, we definitely want to get involved and we just want to align with, leaving it better than it was. And if
Yeah.
it's someone that brings that with us, then we're on board.
You gotta do something. You
have to.
gotta do something. And we say that all the time. If you can give $1, if you could give more, if you can foster, and if it's not animals, it's children or any of our vulnerable populations. But
Sure.
Yeah.
bless you both for wanting to make this world a better place. And thank God it's for the animals, that we love so much, especially in this city. The city needs it probably more than any other city in the US.
It always starts locally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it
does.
starts.
And we'll talk offline, and there are many ways that we can partner, with
Yeah.
to Tama's point, with our rescue communities. And maybe it just starts with the nursing mothers and their puppies, just to make sure that, they're healthy. So we'll talk about that and figure out a way that we can partner, through all of our networks.
And I was thinking too, we have our soiree coming up. You know, it'd be nice to get your product in front of our guests there because
Sure.
it's important that people know about this. And then if you're giving back to the community, it's a win-win-win. You know,
Absolutely.
everybody
Absolutely.
wins, especially the animals. So as Tena said, we can talk offline.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
You would love it.
Thank you, Zee. Thank you, Rudy, so much
Thank
for
you so
being
much.
here. Really
Thank you
glad
guys
to know
for
you
having
both.
us.
Yeah.
This
Been
is
a
so much
pleasure.
fun.
Likewise. Bye.
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 Bye.